Chapter 23. Corin pushed himself back on his bunk, leaning against the bulkhead and drawing his knees up. What brings you guys here? Rysati, sitting down at his feet, frowned. We just heard you were confined to quarters and could be facing a court-martial. How are you doing? The Corellian shrugged. I'm fine. Irisi Delaret brushed black bangs away from her face as she sat on Oral's bed. Aren't you angry? To be treated like this after what you did? He hesitated before answering her. Upon their return to the reprieve, Wedge had pulled him aside and said General Sam intended to bring him up on charges of insubordination, disobeying direct orders, and pirating a squadron of bombers. Wedge had said he thought he could get the charges quashed in light of how things went in Vladet, but until then he wanted Corin to consider himself confined to quarters. In disciplining him in private, he gave Corin the chance to keep the matter private until it was adjudicated. I guess I'm not angry. Corin was surprised to hear himself saying that, but he didn't feel the throat-constricting rage that characterized how he felt after his father's murderer was turned loose without so much as an arraignment. General Sam has no choice but to prefer charges. What I did was pretty stupid and very risky, and I put one of his squadrons in jeopardy. The Twi'lek let one of his brain tails drape itself over Rasadi's shoulder and lightly stroke her throat. If the general didn't report Corin's actions, military discipline would break down. Any pilot with a crack-brained scheme, not to characterize what you did as crack-brained, mind you, could disobey orders and most likely get himself killed. Irisi leaned forward with her elbows on her knees. Corin noticed that her flight suit was unzipped far enough to give him a fair view of her cleavage. But Corin didn't get himself killed. Corin smiled. But it was a near thing. One of the pig drivers shot his torps late. They lost my signal, then picked it up again when I was heading away from the Ravager. When I noticed they were coming after me, I realized that Whistler hadn't killed the jiggle program he had running to randomize my flight as I headed into the Lancer's light. I wanted to brake hard, but he had me locked in on a 20-degree cone, so all I could do was fly straight. Then how did you... Even a puzzled frown couldn't detract too much from Irisi's beauty. I told Whistler to cut it out. I was thinking the jiggle code when I said it. Whistler, being a bit more direct in his problem-solving, just cut the homing beacon the torps were using to track me. They lost their target, couldn't reacquire it, and exploded. The second or so it took them to do all that took me outside their blast radius. Rysati smiled and gently patted Nawara's brain tail. Well, we're happy your R2 unit takes such good care of you. And I, for one, want to thank you for doing what you did out there. That Lancer would have killed a lot of us if we had tried to take it out the normal way. The Twi'lek nodded. The traditional rogue squadron way, leaving bits and pieces of X-Wings scattered around. The blue-eyed woman from Thefera frowned at Nawara. We have a new tradition now, and Corin's action is a glorious part of it. We've had 3 missions and we've lost none of our pilots, and this one Commander Antilles told us our first 5 missions would kill a bunch of us off. Irisi, we have lost a pilot. Corin scratched at his chest where he'd been shot. We almost lost 3 more on Talasy. Don't start thinking we're invulnerable. The missions we've had so far have been relatively simple. I know that, Corin. I don't think of us as leading charmed lives. Her eyes tightened slightly, but Corin sensed no ire in the changed expression. In reading about the unit's history, it has always flown well on simple missions. Even so, our kill rates and repair rates are better than ever before. I don't doubt we'll have missions that will push us to the limit, but if statistics have any truth in them, we've not been burning up all of our luck on our missions. Speak for yourself. Corin winked at her. At the Bank of Luck, I've hit my credit limit. Nawara jerked a thumb at the cabin's closed doorway. Well, there's a wing of bomber jocks willing to make payments on your account. Right now, they're settling for buying the rogues a couple of rounds down in the recreation center. They're toasting Broer for picking up 2 eyeballs over Grand Isle. Rysati rolled her eyes. They'd rather be buying drinks for you. He's the hot pilot from the run. 2 is more than I got. Irisi frowned at him. But you got the frigate. Corin shook his head. No, I didn't. What? The Twi'lek explained. If Corin had so much as shot 1 laser burst at the frigate, then he would have gotten a piece of the kill. But fractions below a half are not recognized as being worthy of being recorded. Warden's squadron got the frigate. Corin is able to verify it, but he gets nothing for it. But that's not fair. Irisi looked from Nawara to Corin and back again. He should get credit for the kill. Irisi, Rysati began. If you're shooting at some squint and he jukes and your shots illuminate an eyeball, would you want the squint to get credit for your kill? I see your point, but I do not think that it is fair. I'll survive it. Corin shrugged. What's not fair is the 3 of you spending time here with me when you should be downstairs having fun and billing it to Defender Wing. Go on. Have a good time. Rysati stood and slipped an arm around Nawara's waist. We'll be going then. We'll let the others know you're doing fine. Thanks. Rysati looked at Irisi. Coming? In a minute. All right. The 2 of them left and the hatch slid shut. Then Irisi crossed the narrow room and took Rysati's place at the foot of the bed. All of a sudden, it seemed to Corin that the cabin, which was none too big to begin with, had become much more close and tiny. He would have used the word intimate to describe it, but the way Irisi laid a hand on his knee gave him the impression she had that word in mind as well, and for some reason that made him feel a bit uncomfortable. Corin, I just wanted to let you know that I feel that I owe you a debt it will be very hard to repay. When the report of a Lancer being in our exit vector came through, I knew. Irisi hesitated, then pressed her free hand lightly against her throat. I knew I wasn't going to make it. I'm not the best pilot in this unit, and I was certain I would die fighting against the frigate. And then you did what you did, and I felt as if a great crushing weight had been lifted from me. She shook her head, bringing dark bangs down to half hide her blue eyes. I know this is sudden. Well, I just feel very close to you now. Leaning forward, she rested both her hands on his kneecaps and laid her chin on top of them. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, probably better than you think. She blinked her eyes, then smiled. You feel it too. I've felt it. Corin sighed. A huge hunk of what you're feeling comes from the downside of the emotional spike you hit during the run. I know what that's like. In Corsac, I was partnered with a woman, Ayala Wasiri. She was pretty. Not as pretty as you are, but no Gomorian either. We raided the glitter stim dealer's warehouse, and a rather nasty light fight erupted. One guy had me centered in his sights when she took him out. I'd thought I was dead, and she saved me. In the immediate aftermath of that, I thought I was in love with her. Or in lust, at least. Before then, we'd just been friends, just like you and I are. Maybe there were some core sparks or something, but nothing we'd noticed or acted on. And that night, well, we both felt it. What happened? Corin scowled. The Imperial liaison officer took the 2 of us into custody for debriefing. 2 days later, we saw each other again. The heat of the moment had passed, and we laughed about it, but never did anything. That fear, and having been so closely brushed by death, made us want something positive to counteract it. Is that bad? No, it's not bad, Irisi. Corin shifted around so he sat beside her and held both of her hands in his. It's also not genuine. And I must admit, I'm not sure about the wisdom of getting involved with someone inside the unit. Rysati and Nawara don't seem to have that trouble with it. I know, and I think they're good for each other. Irisi raised his right hand to her mouth and kissed his palm. I think you may be right, Corin, but I need to ask you something. You said you and your partner had sparks at some basic level, and that led to your attraction to her. Do we have those sparks? Perhaps. I don't know. Feeling uncomfortably warm, Corin tugged at the collar of his flight suit. For the past several years, both before and since leaving Corsac, my emotional life has been a bit unstable. Is there someone else? Do you still care for your partner? No, there's no one else. Not Ayala. Not anyone. Irisi pursed her lips for a moment, then nodded. I accept what you're saying. She stood and stretched languorously. Of course, you don't know what you're missing. Corin let out a deep breath, then rose from his bunk. I wish I didn't. Right now, though, I'm exhausted enough that I'd be no good to either one of us. She laughed and kissed him lightly on the mouth. Corin, I really do appreciate your concerns over my feelings. Irisi backed away from him towards the opening hatchway. Have sweet dreams. She turned in the open hatchway and came face to face with Mirax Tarek. The smuggler's daughter smiled politely. Excuse me. I didn't realize I was intruding. Not at all, Miss Tarek. All the warmth drained from Irisi's voice. I was just leaving so Lieutenant Horn could get some rest. He's confined to quarters, and I don't believe that orders allow civilian visitors. Mirax tapped the datapad, writing in a sheath on her left forearm. I have permission to visit from his commanding officer. We can check with M-Tray if you wish. Irisi looked back at Corin, and he would have preferred being under the Ravager's guns again to her stare. It's okay, Irisi. I'm sure Miss Tarek won't be staying long. Thanks for the talk. You're most welcome, Lieutenant. Irisi turned and nodded curtly to Mirax. Miss Tarek. Later. Mirax watched Irisi walk away, then added under her breath, Much later. Turning back around, she caught Corin staring after Irisi. Flyboys. All you think about is sex. What? She shoved the plastic case she was carrying into his stomach none too gently, then walked past him into the cabin. The smallest smuggling hold on the Skate is bigger than this. The Reprieve wasn't built for pleasure cruising or smuggling. I'm looking forward to grounding at a new base. Corin stepped back out of the hatchway and let it close. Hefting the box, he asked, What's this? Mirax flopped down on Oral's bed. Wedge said you might be down, but then he didn't realize the Bacta Queen would be here. I figured you might like some stuff from home, so I got this little package together. She shrugged. I intended it as something of a peace offering, I guess. Corin sat on the edge of his bed and undid the case's two latches. He opened the box and smiled. In it he saw a half-dozen data card issues and magazines from Corellia, as well as 2 tins of spicy smoked Nerf and a bottle of Weirin's Reserve whiskey. Wow, this is more stuff from Corellia than I've seen in the past 2 years. Mirax rolled up on her right side and rested her hand on her right hand, and rested her head on her right hand. Sorry, guys, I'm stuttering over my words today. Below the whiskey is a Reichkate. I had to substitute some ingredients, but I think it turned out pretty good. Corin pulled the whiskey bottle out of the case and set it down beside him. Beneath it, wrapped in clear plastic, sat the dark brown sweet cake that was traditionally reserved for birthdays, anniversaries, or other celebrations of momentous occasions. Last time I had Reichkate was after my father died, after the funeral. Where'd you find the Liu nuts to put into it? Around. Around? Yeah, around. There's a thriving black market in Corellian goods out there. A lot of us are out here, and with the diktat in place, the imps still control our space. This means we have a big demand with a restricted supply, so it pays to move the merchandise. She scowled at the hatch. That blasted protocol droid of yours um, had 2 cases of Corellian whiskey and has been doling it out to me in 1 and 2 bottle lots. I could have gotten an old custom ship to replace the one that got left in the lake in the Hensara system for the whole case, but he's holding back on me. Getting 2 bottles out of him cost me a hyperdrive horizontal booster and a case of hash mixes that came from Alderaan before it died. Corin raised an eyebrow. Emtray had the whiskey? I got 2 bottles from him. One's beside you and one's in the Reichgate. She sat up and their knees almost touched. You going to arrest the droid for smuggling? No, just let him off with a warning, I guess. The fighter pilot smiled. Do you want some of the Reichgate? You made it, so you should have some of it. She hesitated, then nodded her head. A small piece, but only if we can think of a reason to celebrate. How about being alive? Good enough for me. Corin punctured the plastic wrap with his thumb and broke a corner off the moist, flat cake. He split it in two and handed her the larger of the pieces. In keeping with the tradition, he said, We share this Reichgate in the same way we share our celebration of life. To the celebration of life. They each bit into the cake, and Corin clumsily caught crumbs in his left hand. The cake itself was delicious. The sweetness softened the woody bite of the whiskey, and the Voulez-Nous nuts just melted in his mouth. He swallowed and smiled. This is wonderful. Even if it was made from smuggled ingredients? Even more reason to eat all of the evidence. He shook his head. As a peace offering, I can't think of anything better. Good. Mirek stood and ruffled his brown hair with her hand. When this alliance finally gets around to going after Coruscant, I'll make another Reichgate, and you can carry it to whoever thinks they're in charge. Make the war shorter. This Reichgate might have been able to turn Darth Vader into a Jedi again, but I'm not sure it would work on old Iceheart. He set the case on the bed. Sure you don't want more? Thanks, but I need to go back to the skate. She looked at her datapad. I have about 6 hours until I pull a run coreward. Are we going to fly cover for you? Nope. I'm using my wits and guts to get me through. Corin frowned. No slight intended, but isn't that dangerous? Merak shook her head. I've been ambushed once, and you rogues have been ambushed twice. Right now, I suspect traveling without you might be a bit safer than traveling with you, but this is a simple run anyway. She kissed him on the cheek as the hatch opened. Thanks for your concern. See you when I get back. The hatch eclipsed her as it closed. It struck him that while he had been relieved when Nerisi left, he wished Mirax had stayed. He knew he didn't lust after her, though she didn't surrender much, if anything at all, to Nerisi in the way of looks. With her, because of their common world of origin, he had a connection that he and Nerisi would never share. Even the fact that their fathers had been enemies somehow strengthened the bond between them. He shook himself. Snap out of it, Horn. You're fixing on her the way Arisi fixed on you. Booster Tarek's daughter and Hal Horn's son might be able to be friendly enemies, maybe even friends, but nothing more than that. Remember, first, last, and always, she's a smuggler. There will come a point when you're not cost-effective and she'll cut her losses. He heard his words and knew there was a lot of truth in them. He also heard a lot of his father in them, and that gave him pause. He popped the other half of his piece of Reichgate into his mouth. There are better things to do with my mouth than give voice to speculations that dishonor her gift. We can be friends and will be friends. Out here, with the Empire cutting us off from our home, what we have in common is more important than any differences that might drive us apart. That's the end of the chapter. Hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you soon.